Welcome to episode 14 of the Upgrade Your Life podcast. In this episode, Robbie Law and I discuss becoming an effective communicator. So if you want to be more confident, know how to structure your message, and avoid basic speaking mistakes so you can speak so that people will listen to your message, tune in now. So the big question is, how do ambitious people like us, who grew up listening to the old advice of go to school, work hard for 40 years, and retire when you're old, create a life today that is meaningful, abundant, healthy, and brings joy, while also leading a life that is productive and full of achievement? That is the question, and this is the podcast that will help give you the answers that you're searching for. My name is Del Denny, and welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. Welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. I have a very special guest today. His name is Robbie Law. And Robbie is actually someone that has worked with me quite a bit as a public speaker and someone that's always trying to hone in his craft a little bit. I've brought in one of my own coaches to help you out just as he's helped me out. So Robbie, welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast.
What's up, Del Danny? Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you bringing me on here.
I'm really excited because I've learned so much through the years through you. You've taught me a ton of knowledge on communication, and I thought, hey, it would be awesome to bring Robbie on the podcast. But Robbie, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got to be where you're at today.
Well, dude, I'm sitting in a phone booth at my office right now, so I don't know where I'm at. But I appreciate what you're saying there about me helping you, improve your communication and, giving you some knowledge over the years. I feel the same way. You've really helped me and learn and grow, not just as a speaker, but as a coach. It's been fun working with you. That's my primary primary occupation, what I'm doing every day. It's my business, it's my life, and it's my practice is public speaking, communication. And at this point, I'm coaching people on how they can improve their communication skills so that as they're a leader or a public speaker or a business owner or coach, and they're working with a group of people or they're leading, that their message can come through clearly and effectively so that they can kind of, improve areas of their life, whether it's personal, business, or whatever it is. So that's where I'm at, man.
How did you get into this? You're an amazing communicator, but where did that all stem from?
I'm an amazing communicator. I love you, Dale. You're such a good guy. Well, I wasn't always this way, I guess. If you call me an amazing communicator, I'll do my best to accept that compliment. I early on in my life, I was kind of really into computers. I built my first computer business in 1999 called Lowball PC. We were building computers out of my basement. And I was with my friend Troy, and that was kind of what I did. I wasn't really into the social aspect of, selling or communicating or, being a public speaker. But I was always interested in it because there's a little bit of glamour involved with standing on a stage and having people listen to you. You kind of feel like an expert a little bit. And so I remember watching my uncle who was in that occupation, and he traveled and he had money, and he was fun. And, it was like, I kind of wanted to be like him, but I wasn't really maybe there yet. But he called me one day, and I was working my business. I was going to school full time. I had just gotten my Microsoft certification, so I was a systems engineer, and I was kind of on a career path of computers. But he called me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go out on the road to these personal development trainings and help people?" And I was like, "Dude, I would love that." So I quit everything. My dad was super pissed, by the way. And I quit everything, and I went out and started in this gig. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I thought I was going to use my computer skills. I kind of asked him about that, and he's like, "Oh, you don't really use computers. It's more of a, you're talking to people." And I was like, "Well, I guess I can do that." Well, after 2 weeks, I got fired because I couldn't communicate very well. And so I called my uncle back. I'm like, "Dude, I quit school, bro. Like, what is going on here? This is like, I'm wanting to start a life and get married and everything." And he said, well, let me call the owners, the other owners, and see what I can do. And then 2 weeks later, he sent me back out, and that's when I met my mentor, Andy. And he was this guy that always was trying to communicate. He was a practitioner. He was always trying to get better. And like every conversation, it wasn't just like, I'm going to go up and all of a sudden have amazing communication. It was like, I'm going to fail at communication every day in my normal conversation, trying to get better at it. And it's the first time I'd ever been around someone like that. And he just really trained me on the framework on how to kind of communicate, and showed me there's patterns inside all of communication. And if you can find the patterns, you can start to really dive in and help people, help them make choices, help, have your message travel easier to the other person. And, as he taught me that, I traveled with him for like 3 or 4 years, and it was just like, I was a sponge to it. And that's been what I've done now for 20 years. So I was a full-time speaker for, 15 years and all of that. And that was a lot of travel. So now I work primarily from home, and an office here in Utah, and I just coach people over Zoom and face to face, and do flyouts where I can go and work with people and just kind of help them in whatever area of communication they're trying to improve. So that was my summary, dude.
That's awesome. And like I said earlier, you've helped me out tons, and I know you work with a lot of other clients as well. And it was interesting, before we actually started the podcast, we were talking about being an effective communicator, and that stems from family, that stems from, or that goes to being, how do you connect with your children, to your spouse, to even as your business, you're on Facebook Lives. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So we were talking about one of my clients. His name's Drew Manning, and he's a personal development expert. Like, he's the kind of guy that just makes everyone around him better. So he's a leader, and people gravitate to him. Well, his voice is heard on Facebook Live and commercials, through his books, through, public speeches that he gives. He'll go around and do events. And so when I work with someone like him, it's like every area of his life is his brand. And so if he doesn't communicate very well, that's going to come across. And so when someone's in any type of leadership position, whether that's a parent who is in a leadership position, or a coach who is in a leadership position, or maybe the CEO of a company, their message, that it creates a culture, it creates a duplication of kind of who they are through their business. Our kids become a lot like us. Well, how do they do that, Dell? I think a lot of it is DNA. I think there's some genetics involved, but I also think they observe our communication, whether we want them to or not. They see us, they hear us, they feel us, and that communication affects them and duplicates to them. Well, the same thing goes with any type of business owner or whatever, or even just somebody working with a client. If you communicate your message in the right way, then that message is not only easier received, but it travels easier and it moves further. So if I tell a story as a CEO to my managers, or my other executives, my executives then share that story with their managers. That's just the nature of life. So now those executives share it with their managers, those managers share it with their sales team, and the sales team now shares that with the customer. What if that CEO didn't communicate that message well? By the time that telephone game is played, because that CEO isn't talking directly to the salespeople all the time, because that telephone game is played, by the time they get to the salesman, they've got a really diluted message. So working with the top is and focusing on that area of leadership, of communication being such, it's 100% of us still. As much as we want to say it's only 70 to 80% of our day, and that's what statistics tell us, it's 100% of us, because the other times I'm communicating with myself. And there's another form of communication going on, and that's the personal development that you and I have been focused on for the last 20 years, So I know I'm rambling, but this topic is so important to me, because communication really is, it produces everything that we have around us,
I absolutely agree to that. So if you were coaching me, and let's just make a hypothetical situation here. Let's say I'm a personal brand, just like the person you talked about earlier. I'm going on Facebook Lives and I'm crafting a message. How would you tell me to craft a message? Like where do I begin? How do I create a story? What is there a framework that's involved with it? How can I be a better communicator on Facebook, or whether I'm talking to my employees? What message would you give to me?
Yeah. So the first thing, and this is such a big conversation because the framework of how to do it, you go ask Russell Brunson how the framework of a webinar is done and how the framework of all that's done. It's all the same. Like, I see it as no different. Russell Brunson he's the ClickFunnels guy, for anyone who may not know who that is. But he started as a seminar speaker. That's exactly the same thing that I was doing, essentially. It was just up in front of big groups of people and helping them improve their lives and learning how to sell, learning how to communicate, learning how to build businesses, all of those things that I was doing up on stage. There was a framework involved in all that. The same framework would apply to a Facebook Live, but trying to get to that level of detail for someone who's brand new is really, really challenging. So what I would typically do if someone's new, Dell, is I would not necessarily focus on framework. I would focus on internal process. I would focus on a few things. The way that I got started was this. Andy Tanner came to me and he put his right hand out and he said, Robbie, he put his right hand out to me and I shook his hand. And he said, why did you shake my hand? And I said, well, I shook your hand because you put it out. And he said, well, I didn't ask you to shake it. And I said, I know, but that's what you do. And he goes, well, this time don't shake it. And he put his hand out. And I sat there and his hand was out there, and his big hand, Dale, you've seen his hand. He's like 6'8", 300, his big old Frankenstein hands out there. And it just looks so hard not to shake. So I'm looking at his hand, and finally I reached out and shook his hand. And I said, and he goes, why'd you shake my hand? I told you not to. And he said, I just felt like I needed to. Well, he was teaching me about something called stimulus and response. Okay. And one of the things that we fail to remember is that we're the stimulus all the time, not the response. So when we go to do a Facebook Live, I'm the stimulus. I'm not the response. So I need to first not worry about what other people think. I need to not worry about what their response is. I need to be aware of what their response is going to be, but I need to remember that I'm the stimulus. So that means that I need to get myself in the right place. So if I were to really give a few tips, the first thing that I would say is find a way to create a process right before you get on Facebook Live where you're calm. Because as your emotion goes up, your intelligence level starts to go down in this case. So find a way to get yourself calm. Have a simple outline with bullet points. Open, middle, close. That's a simple framework. That's not my full framework, but that's a simple one. So know how you're going to end, know what's in the middle, know what's at the beginning. But get yourself into a calm state. My way of doing that would be to focus on my breathing. I would use affirmations. I would say things like, I am a master persuader. I am influential. I am compelling. I am a master persuader. I am influential. I am compelling. I would say things like, I am the knower of all knowledge needed right now. I am the knower of all knowledge needed right now. When I started to train myself to tell my mind, you know enough, and you're going to get this done right, I could get up and get in front of people. Because for me, I had a hard time talking to a person. So Andy had me practicing those things so that I was telling myself that I could be successful. And then I eventually felt it. So if I were to give anyone early advice, it would be to talk to yourself right before you get on your Facebook Live. Tell yourself you're going to crush it. Tell yourself that you're confident. Tell yourself that you're going to provide the message that you have prepared, and just go up calmly believing it. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but I know that it works.
No, you're absolutely right, because you look at the high performers, you look at athletes, you look at business people. Let's just use athletes, for example. When Tiger Woods gets up to hit the ball, he has a routine that he does before he goes. Grabs the club, adjusts his feet, adjusts his hips. He does the same exact approach every time he gets up to the ball. and it gives you comfort. You're not guessing, it's a routine. And so the same thing rings true for speaking is, we can, like you said, when emotion is high, intelligence is low. So how do we keep our emotion out of it? Well, we develop a routine, just like you said. So once people develop that routine, where should they go from there?
So once they develop their routine, I think understanding human beings is kind of the beginning, because I think for the most part, we'll talk to ourselves when we talk, because that's the most comfortable way to talk. So we're typically going to say the things that we would want to hear. And that's going to be natural early on as a communicator. As we start to develop more and more, we're going to learn that stimulus and response affects everything. One of the things that you and I have discussed a lot about is asking questions as opposed to making statements. When we make a statement early on, people get the opportunity to disagree with us. Where we ask questions early on, people have the opportunity to have a choice. Do you believe that is true is much different than that is true. Because if I say that is true and someone on the other end maybe doesn't have this a belief in me, or they don't know me very well, it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters who thought it up. If they are asked a question, that the response is to think up an answer. If I make a statement, the response is to decide whether or not they agree with me. I want to avoid agreement early on. And so for me, understanding how a human brain works is to look at this understanding and say, okay, not everybody is like me. So what are the people listening to me going to be like? And I would draw up the personas of people that are going to be listening to me. I would at least know who they are. Now, I use personality types for that. You know how I am about that. I've got my own little system on that. But I use those 4 personality types to understand that I'm not just talking to myself. I'm talking to a bunch of people. So I need to make sure that the message matches what they want to hear, not just what I want to say.
So let's talk a little bit about personality types too, because that has been crucial for me. And I know this, and I think this can help other people. So you have 4 categories, if you will. Can you break that down a little bit for us? Kind of a little overview for us? Because we could do a whole hour and a half training on just this at least, but could you make it in a simple process?
No, I'd love to. Mine are so easy to remember. That's why I'll break it down fast. It's an acronym: SELF, SELF, like myself. Self is a big part of my curriculum because, I believe that it's very, very easy to observe other people. I think it's very, very challenging to look at ourselves. Looking myself in the mirror is and having a true reality of who I am is much, much more challenging than looking at someone else and kind of observing their behaviors. Now, I'm not talking judgment here. Let's not misunderstand. It's just that our eyeballs are on all the time. So we can observe so quickly and so easily if we use them. So SELF is an acronym, and S stands for sun, E stands for earth, L stands for lightning, F stands for fire. And sun it's just the reason I like this acronym is it's just easy to remember. Sun is bright, bubbly, fun, engaging, where your earths are going to be a little bit more subdued, a little bit more relaxed, caring, nurturing. They're like the tree huggers, but they're also mama bears. So don't push them over the edge, because they're the ones that you really don't want to upset, because they really believe in what they believe in. The lightning is the detail oriented, the very I'm trying to think of the best word for lightning. Lightnings are systematic, they're detail oriented, and they're loyal. They're loyal to their beliefs. So they're very stubborn, some might say, but they're typically right because they're very versed. They're very, they're your Google. They're your friend that's the Google. They got all the answers, but they typically they're not huge conversationalists unless they know the topic really well. So they're typically kind of quiet unless they know the topic and they need to come in and correct somebody. They'll definitely do that.
So that's more of your engineer, your accountant, your number cruncher. Is that right?
Yep. that's going to be much more, they're thinking inside the box, they don't want to get outside that box. They're loyal to their cause, too, but their loyalty is more about obedience to the law. you know Fires are the driven, intense, powerful, but also very often seen as arrogant, over the top. The fire can burn the earth because they're very intense, and the earth is typically kind of softer, where the lightning is going to drive the sun crazy because they're all about details. The sun's all about creativity. So those are the four different ones, and I don't call them types, I call them modes, because I believe we behave in each of those four modes at some point, depending on where we are, how we are, what state we're in. When I'm around my kids, I want to be in the state of an earth and a sun. So I'm fun and happy. I'm trying to be in that state, because if all I am is Mr. Detail oriented and son, put your shoes away and tie the knot and do the thing, it's like my son's just going to be bothered by that if that's how I always am. So I don't think that we're one of them. I think we're a kaleidoscope of all four. And I do believe that we can adjust and change and learn and adapt and become anything that we want in this lifetime by just understanding that those exist, and then, really deciding which behaviors make the most sense in which situations, and learning how to adapt. Because when I go to work, if I'm in a job where I need to be detail oriented and that's not really for me, I either need to learn how to adapt, or I better find something else, or I'm going to be miserable. So finding how that works is really important.
So I love this thought process. And so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and create a scenario and how we communicate with someone that has one of those modalities. So let's just paint this picture here. Let's just say that you have a daughter and you want her to clean her room. Okay. And let's say she's a son. How would you communicate to her to clean her room?
Well, first of all, we always want to try and make it their idea, right? The more it's their idea, the better. So what would motivate a son? They would be motivated by fun and excitement, right? So what I would do is I would paint a scenario in the future of an event that we were going to have that we needed to get to that would be fun for them, or so that as they cleaned their room, they had an anticipation of fun that was going to happen. So we're doing it for a purpose that was going to end up in a positive reward. So that would be one way to handle a son. Another way would be to make it fun. My son Lucas he's a fire, but he's got a lot of sunny because he's all over. He's like very, very creative, and his mind just travels. It's really fun, but his room is very rarely clean. And so my son Parker, he's got a lot of lightning in him. His room is always clean. I don't really need to do much. But Lucas, he's just like putting Legos together. He's doing stuff. So when we clean things up, we put a laundry basket that's a basketball hoop, so that the fun would be involved in putting laundry away, because it was always on the ground. So we put a basketball hoop in there. So he throws the laundry up into the hoop, and then it goes inside the basket that's actually hooked to the basket. So, you
Nice.
Make it fun. So you find what works, but I mean, that's maybe an example. Do you want me to try a different personality type to give?
I'd like to go through all three, just to show the difference between how you communicate with someone that is in that modality. So you said a son, you're making it fun for them. Hey, we're going to play some basketball as we're cleaning their room. How would you do an earth?
Yeah. And really, this is a way of being, right? This is not a like, hey, one time this is going to work, and then it's like, I'm going to, so having the framework of understanding that, my son Parker, he's a lightning with an earth, backup. He's got that really soft side to him. So because he's a lightning, he wants to do things because they're right. Because he's an earth, he wants to do things for the greater good as well. So he knows that it means a lot to me for him to keep his room clean. So one of the things that I do for him is I offer constant positive feedback towards how much it makes my life easier for Parker to have his room clean. And I do it, Dell, on a daily basis. It used to be something, because I have a rapport game plan because I'm very tactical. I really want to have a great relationship with my kids. And when I stopped traveling so much and got off the road, it was different, and so I worked rapport. I have a game plan that I worked in where it was every day I was going to, in the morning, make sure that Parker heard that I was grateful that his room was clean. So this was a good choice for you, Dell, because I've done this with Parker. So that's how it was. I would thank him for his room being clean. And then, within a very short time, because he was only 9 when I got off the road, within a very short time, he was cleaning his room because I was letting him know that it meant a lot to me. And so then it became, now I understand, because at 9, you don't really totally understand like a clean, maybe you do, maybe my kids are just behind, but 9, maybe you don't fully understand the value of a clean room. Well, Parker understands it now, but I think part of it came because I was helping provide that positive feedback. And I think that's the type of feedback that would work for most of the personality types, but specifically with an Earth, when they're operating in that mode as their primary or secondary, that means a lot to them to know that your life is easier because of them.
All right. So I absolutely agree. Now let's go into another one. Let's do lightning. One of your sons is a lightning, a little more detail oriented. How would you get them to clean their room?
Okay. So a detail oriented person is going to want step by step typically. So one of the things that might help is to just put something on the wall that was an order of, this is what you would do. Like, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, like clean my room, make my bed, brush my teeth, like everything that you have, because I think lightnings more than others love to check a box, and even if you made it like a whiteboard where you could actually have them hold the pen out and check the box, I think that's the type of thing a lightning would feel. If the box wasn't checked, they'd be walking out of the room going, my loyalty to doing what's right is too hard, and they'd walk out thinking I better run back in and clean it. Lightnings are not going to be too challenging to keep their room clean because they're going to do it pretty much the moment they realize it's going to be easier for them, they'll do it. And so, like my son Parker, we really don't have to do much. I think he's on autopilot for the rest of his life of keeping his room clean because he's lightning,
Systematic. I love it. And then what about a fire? Someone that's a little more cut and dry. I don't know what the word to say for that.
Fire is like about challenge. Like because I've worked on this with Lucas as well, because his primary, I think, is fire, and then his secondary would be sun. He's more in fire mode, I think. But his so for him, one of the things that he was struggling with was I can't remember. It was something in the bathroom. I think it was brushing his teeth, or maybe it was putting his towel up. And whenever he did it, I just played the devil's advocate. Like, oh, you're putting your towel up? And he goes, yeah, I do it. And I go, well, are you going to do it next time? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh, are you sure? Because like, I remember like before, so what I do is try and get him to compete with himself. I would constantly trying to get him to compete with what he used to do or what he was so that he could prove growth, because fires love to feel growth. If they don't feel like they're growing, then they feel like they're going backwards, and they feel really, really, I don't know, just tons of discontent in their life. Like fires need to feel like this progress feeling, where like an earth can just be so totally content. A sun can be totally content. A fire needs that growth feeling, so if someone's really driven, they get frustrated by, the lack of growth that they show in their own life. So
I gotta say, just from the challenges you gave to your son there, like I could feel I'm a fire. So when I hear those challenges, I'm like, yeah, I'd do that. Yeah. That makes sense. I'm like, I was up for the challenge. Just put the towel back on the rack.
I know. Isn't it so funny? Because but that's just the way human brain works, man. It just depends on which area of your brain you're using more of, are you using your croc brain, or are you using other areas where you're like processing, and so if you're using really, really fast processing stuff, that's your sun and your fire. That's your visual people. They're processing fast, so they work fast. We totally got into personality types. Look how fast I can start talking about this, Dale.
Well,
you want to talk about personality types still?
Yeah, I really do love personality types, and this is something I've studied for years, and I've really felt like this has given me a competitive advantage, because the way that I think about personality types is just like like listening to something on a radio. You know, if you tune in just 1 degree off, you miss the message, but you have to get it just right. And we may be broadcasting, but they may not be receiving. And so it's important to understand these personality types, not just how you're broadcasting your message, but understanding what the reception is of that. And so as a speaker and a communicator myself, this has been absolutely crucial. And I think this is the secret sauce. And I know we weren't really planning on going down this route in this interview, but I think this is gold right here.
Yeah, I love personality types. And, you know, that's why it's easy once you start to see, like, if I can look at someone and go visually, sun, earth, lightning, fire, or within my best estimation, this is where they are, I immediately go to, I'm 50% of the way there. If I'm in sales, I'm 50% of the way to myself. Because I can narrow it down to 1 or 2, to 2 of the 4 in almost instantly. Because suns and fires are faster, they think faster, talk faster, they have more visuals on their body, they're more easy to see because they're brighter, they have gold on them. Like, you won't see an earth or a lightning very often wearing gold chains or, you know, a gold watch. They'll be much more subdued, you know, because earths are very subdued. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be looked at. A sun wants to be looked at, whether they want to admit it or not. They don't mind it. They are cool with attention, man. You know these people, Del. You're talking to one right
because
now,
I'm one of them. That is
yeah.
exactly
And the earths, on the other hand, are like, man, don't look at me. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. You know, and the lightnings are kind of that way sometimes until they're noticed as having value for something that they've done really, really well in their life. But like, or know a lot about, like it. But an earth and a lightning, an earth, they walk slower. They don't dress like as outwardly, you know. So when they talk slower. They listen better. If you are in the middle of a conversation with a guy like me, you're not going to get a word in. You're going to, in the middle of a conversation with a guy like Dave Anderson, our buddy, who was like the biggest earth ever. Dave would sit and listen to me for an hour, and then I would go, man, what a great conversation, bro. He didn't even say one word, man, but he was listening. He was engaged. You know, that was his mode, you know. So you can notice that about people and go, oh, wow, they're earths. What does that mean I need to do? Because when it comes to communication, to bring us back to that, Del, when I'm speaking to somebody, public speaking or anything, and I say, this is the type of person I am, I'm missing the point of communication. I'm missing the fact that there's another person listening, and communication doesn't happen when you talk. Communication happens when both people share a conversation. Communication is the production of a shared meaning. I remember my communications teacher teaching that in college, and I didn't understand it then, but I get it now. It's like, we've got to share. We've got to have a communication, which means we've both got to be there, which means if I'm like super intense as a speaker, or a salesman, or a communicator, and I'm working with an earth, then I'm immediately going to come in at a level that's going to be hard for them to fully understand me. Whereas if I can back it away and go, I'm not being fake. I'm being authentically able to be available to the other person. I'm available to them because I don't have to be intense all the time. I can learn to tone it back for the sake of value for everybody. You know, that's what personality types taught me, you know. And so when I was speaking on it, because I started really diving in 2009 and personality, it was 2009. Jason Sham, no, 2005. Jason Shammy is the first guy that introduced me to this, dude. Like, that self thing, I didn't make that up. Like, well, I made up the self part. Like, all those types, those are just things that everybody else had. Like, I just made my own version of it, you know, my own concept, and added a bunch of stuff that I thought, you know, over my years of observing people were valuable. But when I started adding it into my speaking, Del, it made my life so much more full, because I felt like it wasn't me speaking to 30% of the audience anymore. Because I could go in one sentence, I could go, and I know some of you really want to just have, be with your family, and you want to be able to, and while others of you would love to just be out on the beach. But, you know, I know all of us aren't thinking that way. Some of us just want to see that step-by-step process to get exactly where we need to go so that we can achieve those things. And, you know, while others of us are just saying, I just want to be number one. I want to feel success. Whatever drives you, you know, find that motivation and get there. So I just hit all 4 personality types in, you know, 2 paragraphs. So then people may not hear the first one or the third one or the fourth one. They might hear the second one. But as I learned to start saying it faster, you know, and learn how to kind of put that into my speech, dude, I was able to look into the crowd, and you can tell by how many people come up to you after and are waiting in line, and how long that line is and how long they will wait to know how well you actually did. Because if they're bailing out on you after an event and they're not coming up to talk to you, you didn't truly impact them. I mean, some of them have people at places to be, don't get me wrong. But if people come up to you after and you got a line of people waiting, it's because you connected with them and they want something more in your one-on-one, you know, personal conversation after. And I loved that opportunity to talk to those people that were in my audience that didn't have a chance to talk to me. But I don't know that I would have connected that opportunity if I didn't truly try to make personality types part of my process, my communication.
That's solid stuff right there. It's helped me out tons, and I love the direction this has gone. And in fact, we're actually getting close to the end of our time, but I feel like we're going to have a part 2 down the road here. What do you think?
I love a part 2, Dale. Listen to me just talk. You asked me 4 questions, and then I just talked.
You are a communicator, that's for sure. I want to ask you a question, and I ask this with all of my guests. It's a standard question, and it goes like this. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself for reaching your full potential?
Oh, man, this is so easy, Dale. Believe in yourself, because you're a badass. You really are. Trust it. Know it. You're not at the end of learning. You'll never be there. And you're not at the end of wisdom, because wisdom will come through all the that you do from the next 20 years of your life that are really stupid decisions. But wisdom will come from it. So just be confident that you'll get through all of it. And that's what I would say to my 18-year-old self. I've had that conversation in my head a couple times.
Beautiful. Well, Robbie, how can people get in touch with you?
They jump on my Facebook, man. It's Robbie Law Kula, Kula.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure I add that to the show notes. So make sure you follow Robbie. He's always giving tips and tricks and how to be a better communicator. It's awesome stuff. So Robbie, thank you for coming on the Upgrade Your Life podcast. We learned a lot.
Dude, thank you, Dale. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, Robbie. We appreciate it. And we'll have to have you on for round 2 with Robbie Law. Well, that's it, my friends. Thanks so much for being with us this week. Do you have some feedback you'd like to share? Well, please leave a note in the comments section. If you've enjoyed this episode on becoming an effective communicator, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening at this to get automatic episode updates for your Upgrade Your Life podcast. And finally, please take a minute to leave us an honest review and ratings on iTunes. They really help us out when it comes to the ranking of the show, and I make it a point to read every single one of those reviews that we get. So please leave a review right now. I appreciate it, and thanks for listening.